Hi everyone, my name is Gonzalo Ruiz Navarro, and today I'm going to show you the process of this painting of the Botanical Garden in Valencia, my hometown in Spain. As you can see, I started on a canvas that was already toned with a light grey color. First of all, I'm drawing the main lines, paying special attention to the vanishing point, which helps define where the path goes, as well as other architectural elements. You can see that I'm blocking in the shadows. Everything is very loose at this stage, and I focus on the main shapes. I try to simplify everything into three values: a very dark tone, almost black, a medium tone, and then the very light value, which is simply the color of the canvas. In this stage, I'm using a mix of burnt umber, ultramarine blue, and white. For the initial lines, I use a thin brush, and then I switch to a larger brush to block in the big masses. You can also see me using a cloth to lift some darker areas where I want to bring back the light. I really enjoy this stage of the painting because it helps me focus on values and drawing before starting to work with color. In this scene, the background naturally has a lot of dark values, while the foreground is mostly lighter. However, it's important to look for dark accents in the foreground too, because the darkest darks usually belong in the foreground. This helps create depth and contrast. As you can see in the bushes and the pots, there are some very dark areas that will help to push the background farther away. At this point, I'm using a bit of walnut alkyd medium to keep my paint fluid and easy to move around. Now I'm starting to paint with color over this grey layer. The underpainting helps a lot because when I place a color, I already know the value I need to match. This allows me to focus more on temperature, whether I want the color warmer, cooler, more intense or more muted, without worrying too much about getting the value right. As you can see, I'm placing some dark greens that match the dark value underneath. Now I'm painting the pots and the columns that support them. As always, I'm thinking about which areas are in light and which are in shadow. That's one of the most important things when painting a scene like this. Everything in shadow is always darker than anything in light. I'm mainly using a flat synthetic brush size 10. This helps me focus on larger shapes instead of getting caught up in small details too soon. Often, using a small brush on a big canvas makes you lose sight of the overall composition. This canvas is 30 by 4 inches. In this area of the foreground, there is some lavender, which will be a nice place to add a touch of purple. This color will contrast with all the greens in the rest of the painting. Most of the painting has many greens because of the vegetation, along with browns for the path and the pillars, and warm colors for the geranium flowers. Adding these purples create a pleasant contrast. Now I'm painting the flowers on the geraniums. At the beginning, I blocked in the masses of light and shadow instead of trying to draw individual petals. I think it's a mistake to start thinking these are flowers and go straight to details. It's much better to see them as simple forms with light and shadow. My focus now is to find the right colors for the light and shadow areas, to judge the intensity, whether they need to be brighter or more muted, and how much white to mix in. I'm doing the same approach with the leaves, first establishing where the light hits and then adding darker greens. It's also very important to include some really dark accents in the greens, like I'm doing here, because these darks around the flowers help them pop. These bright colors need strong contrast to appear luminous. Now I'm starting to use more paint. In the first stage of color, the paint is a bit thinner, but once I have a clearer idea of what I want, I use thicker paint. I also start using the palette knife. The knife helps me create more texture and build up the paint. In the background, when I started, the dark colors looked very dark, but now that I'm adding thicker paint, I can go even darker. These darks help bring all the lighter colors to life. It's important to keep everything loose in the background. You don't want too much detail there. The pots in the foreground will have a little more definition. At this point, I often work in different areas at the same time. If you focus too long on one small section, you risk losing harmony across the whole painting. So I spend a while refining something like a flower pot and then step back to look at how everything fits together. This painting is inspired by some beautiful gardens painted by the Spanish Impressionist master Joaquín Sorolla. I think it's a good exercise to study artists you admire, to be inspired by their compositions and colors, and then create your own work with a similar feeling. If you know Sorolla's paintings, you might recognize that influence here. I love his brushwork and use of light and color, and I try to bring some of that into this painting. In this close-up, you can see the texture I'm building in the paint. It's not only about depicting flowers and trees, it's also about exploring the material qualities of oil paint, which is something I really enjoy. Now we are approaching the final stages. I'm adding some finishing touches and deeper darks. As I always recommend, it's important at this point to look at your work from a distance and make sure everything feels balanced. This is a subject I really love: nature, gardens, flowers, Mediterranean plants. It's always rewarding to paint something that inspires you. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please consider subscribing, leaving a comment or sharing it with someone who loves painting. Thank you so much for watching.